History remembers Queen Victoria as one of the greatest monarchs Britain has ever known. She ruled for more than 60 years and became the face of an empire that stretched across the world. But behind the royal crown was the story of a young woman whose life was transformed by one extraordinary love. Before she became a legendary Queen, Victoria was a lonely princess growing up under strict rules inside Kensington Palace. Every part of her daily life was carefully controlled. She could not choose where to go. She could not spend time freely with friends. Even simple decisions were made by the adults around her. The young princess often looked through the palace windows dreaming of a life where she could make her own choices. She loved reading history, learning languages, and studying the lives of great rulers. Deep inside she hoped that one day she would prove herself worthy of the responsibility waiting for her. When Victoria was only 18 years old, everything changed. Early one morning she was awakened with urgent news. King William IV had died. The crown now belonged to her. Within hours the shy young princess became Queen Victoria. She walked into a room filled with powerful politicians, experienced advisors, and respected nobles. Many wondered if such a young woman could lead one of the most powerful nations in the world. Victoria remained calm. She spoke with quiet confidence and showed that she understood the enormous responsibility she had accepted. Although she now ruled Britain, she often felt alone. The palace was filled with people, but very few truly understood the pressure she carried every day. She needed someone she could trust, not because of her title, but because of who she was as a person. Around this time, one name began to appear more often in conversations inside the royal family. That name was Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Albert had been born into a German royal family. From childhood he was known for his intelligence, discipline, and kind nature. Unlike many princes of his time, he cared deeply about education, science, music, and helping society improve. He believed that knowledge and progress could make nations stronger. Years earlier, members of the royal family had quietly hoped that Victoria and Albert might one day marry. As they grew older, the idea remained in the background, but no one knew whether their personalities would truly match. When Victoria finally met Albert again as a young woman, something unexpected happened. She immediately noticed his calm character, warm smile, and respectful manners. Albert was equally impressed by Victoria. He did not simply see a queen. He saw a determined young woman carrying responsibilities that very few people could understand. During their conversations, they discovered how much they had in common. Both loved music. Both enjoyed art. Both believed education could change lives. And both dreamed of building a future based on duty, kindness, and mutual respect. For the first time since becoming Queen, Victoria felt completely comfortable speaking with someone who expected nothing from her except honesty. She laughed freely. She smiled without pretending. And she began to imagine that perhaps her lonely life inside the palace could finally change. Neither of them could know that their meeting would become one of the most famous royal love stories in history. A love that would influence not only their own lives but also the future of the British monarchy for generations to come. After every meeting, Queen Victoria found herself thinking about Prince Albert. His kindness, honesty, and quiet confidence stayed in her mind long after their conversations had ended. Unlike many people around the palace, Albert never tried to impress her with power or wealth. He spoke with sincerity and treated Victoria as a person before treating her as a queen. As the weeks passed, their friendship grew stronger. They spent hours discussing history, literature, music, science, and the future of Britain. Every conversation brought them closer together. Victoria realized she had found someone she could completely trust. Albert admired the young queen for her intelligence, determination, and sense of duty. He understood the enormous pressure she carried every day and encouraged her to believe in her own judgment. For the first time since becoming Queen, Victoria no longer felt alone. One day she reached an important decision. Because she was the reigning monarch, tradition required that she should make the proposal herself. With courage and confidence, Victoria asked Prince Albert to marry her. Albert accepted with joy. Their engagement quickly became one of the biggest stories in Britain. People across the country waited with excitement for the royal wedding. On the 10th of February 1840, Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were married at St. James's Palace in London. The ceremony was filled with elegance, music, and celebration. Victoria chose to wear a beautiful white wedding dress, a decision that later inspired countless brides around the world. Crowds gathered outside hoping to catch a glimpse of the newly married royal couple. Church bells rang through the streets and people celebrated the beginning of a new chapter in British history. After the wedding, Albert became far more than the Queen's husband. He became her closest advisor, her greatest supporter, and her most trusted friend. Together they built a marriage based on love, respect, and shared responsibility. Their partnership soon became admired throughout Britain. The palace that had once felt lonely was now filled with warmth, laughter, and hope. Neither Victoria nor Albert could imagine how deeply their love would shape the future of the monarchy. But the greatest moments of their lives were still waiting ahead. Together they would build a royal family that would become one of the most famous in history. After their marriage, Queen Victoria and Prince Albert began a new chapter that would become one of the most admired royal partnerships in British history. Buckingham Palace was no longer only the home of a queen. It became the home of a loving family. The palace halls that had once felt quiet were now filled with music, laughter, and hope. Victoria trusted Albert more than anyone else. Whenever an important decision reached her desk, she often asked for his thoughts. Albert never tried to take the crown from the Queen. Instead, he worked beside her with loyalty, wisdom, and respect. He believed the monarchy should inspire the nation through education, science, culture, and progress. Together, they supported schools, museums, universities, and scientific discoveries. Albert encouraged new inventions that would help improve the lives of ordinary people. One of his greatest achievements was helping organize the Great Exhibition of 1851. Inside the magnificent Crystal Palace, thousands of inventions from around the world were displayed. Millions of visitors came to witness the exhibition, and it became a symbol of Britain's innovation and industrial strength. Queen Victoria proudly watched as Albert's vision became a historic success. Their partnership showed the world that a royal marriage could be built on friendship, trust, and shared purpose. Away from public ceremonies, they enjoyed simple family moments together. Victoria and Albert raised a large family and devoted much of their time to their children. They believed that family life was just as important as royal duty. Photographs, paintings, and letters from the period reveal a couple who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. The British public admired them not only as rulers but also as devoted parents. As the years passed, Victoria often said that Albert was her greatest strength. He gave her confidence during difficult political moments and reminded her that compassion was just as important as power. But history rarely allows happiness to last forever. In the early 1860s, Albert's health began to decline. At first, the illness seemed temporary. The royal family hoped that rest and treatment would restore his strength. No one inside Buckingham Palace imagined that the future of the Queen and the monarchy was about to change forever. The love that had transformed Victoria's life was about to face its greatest test. The year 1861 became the darkest year of Queen Victoria's life. Prince Albert, who had always appeared strong, calm, and full of energy, suddenly became seriously ill. Doctors visited Buckingham Palace day after day, hoping his condition would improve. Victoria refused to leave his side. She spent countless hours sitting beside his bed, holding his hand and praying that the man she loved would recover. The palace that had once echoed with laughter slowly became silent. Servants walked quietly through the corridors. Every face carried the same expression of fear and uncertainty. Victoria tried to remain hopeful. She believed Albert would once again walk through the palace gardens, smile at their children, and continue helping her guide the nation. But history had another path waiting for them. On the 14th of December, 1861, Prince Albert passed away. At that moment, Queen Victoria felt that her world had come to an end. The woman who ruled one of the greatest empires on earth could do nothing to stop the loss of the person she loved most. She later wrote that she had lost not only her husband but also her closest friend, her wisest advisor, and the greatest happiness of her life. After Albert's death, everything changed. Victoria dressed only in black as a sign of lifelong mourning. His bedroom remained exactly as he had left it. His clothes, books, personal belongings, and writing desk stayed untouched. Every morning, palace servants prepared his room as though he was still alive, because the Queen could not bear to let his memory disappear. For many years, she avoided grand public celebrations. People rarely saw the cheerful young Queen they once admired. Instead, they saw a widow carrying a sorrow that never truly faded. Some politicians worried that her absence from public life might weaken the monarchy. Others understood that behind the crown was simply a grieving wife. Even in her deepest sadness, Victoria never forgot her responsibility to Britain. Slowly she returned to her royal duties, carrying both the weight of the crown and the weight of her broken heart. She discovered that true courage is not the absence of pain. True courage is continuing to move forward even when your heart is filled with grief. The love that had once brought endless happiness now became the memory that gave her strength to continue ruling an empire. Although Prince Albert was gone, Queen Victoria never allowed his memory to fade. Every day she carried his love with her as she continued to rule Britain. She believed that Albert was still part of every important decision she made. His ideas about education, science, industry, and public service continued to influence the monarchy for many years. As Britain entered a new age, Queen Victoria remained a symbol of stability and dedication. Railways connected cities. Great discoveries changed the world. Factories expanded across the country. The British Empire reached its greatest influence. Through every success and every challenge, Victoria remembered the man who had stood beside her during the happiest years of her life. She visited places that reminded her of Albert and often spoke about the kindness, wisdom, and loyalty that had made him such an extraordinary husband. Their children grew older and started families of their own. The values that Victoria and Albert had shared continued through future generations of the royal family. The public slowly came to understand that behind the powerful queen was a woman whose greatest achievement was not only ruling an empire. It was loving with complete devotion and remaining faithful to that love for the rest of her life. When Queen Victoria passed away in 1901, an extraordinary chapter of British history came to an end. After her death, she was laid to rest beside Prince Albert exactly as she had wished. Their story did not end with a royal wedding or with the crown. It became one of the greatest love stories ever recorded in the history of the British monarchy. More than a century later, people still visit their palaces, memorials, and historical landmarks to remember the queen who ruled an empire and the prince who changed her life forever. Their story reminds us that even the most powerful rulers can be transformed by love. Crowns may represent power. Empires may rise and fall. But true love has the power to live on through history for generations. And that is why Queen Victoria and Prince Albert remain one of the most unforgettable royal couples the world has ever known.